Good evening. If you are listening in on the FORSEA Forces of Renewal, Southeast Asia and beyond, dialogue on democratic struggles. One second. I got it. So I'm Zani, the host and activist with the FORSEA. I am very privileged and honored to have a panel of very, very politically engaged and also well-researched activists and scholars from Palestine, Malaysia, Indonesia, Nepal, and Myanmar. Some of them are in their country, some of them are in exile. So we have a tall order today. We will be covering the recent upheavals or uprisings in Nepal, Indonesia, and the 8 decades of liberation struggle in Palestine, and also the Myanmar democratic resistance movements that have taken place over different waves. I have a Rohingya brother, a very prominent activist, Nesan Rin, speaking and co-hosting this as well. I will also share a few thoughts on the larger democratic movement, which is taking place alongside the continuing genocide of Muslim Rohingya people. Our first speaker is Rula Shadid. She's a policy advocate and a long-time policy analyst with the Palestine Policy Institute. And she will go first. And without further ado, Rula, the floor is yours.
Thank you very, very much, Zarni. And I am very honored and privileged to be in this call, very important call about the different issues as well in Asia, because what we try to strive and focus on is the importance of intersectional struggles and how we can together work together in solidarity, work together in creating knowledge on how to deal with the oppressor, because unfortunately we do feel that the oppressors are very much learning from each other and very much applying the same oppressive regimes on the people. So it is very important that we, even if we are facing extreme existential threats like we are in Palestine and in many other countries present here as well, that we focus on how we can unite to be able to deal with the situation, learn from our brothers and sisters and comrades around the world. So I'm Rula Shadid. I am the co-director of the Palestine Institute for Public Diplomacy. I'm a jurist in international criminal law, and we work mainly on introducing the liberatory narrative on Palestine and lobbying and mobilizing states and movements around the world to fight the oppressor in Palestine specifically, and also, of course, in intersectionality with other struggles. So I was asked to comment a little bit about the decision that we saw yesterday in the General Assembly and how the Security Council and the US veto. And of course, we're not surprised. We knew in advance that the United States will veto. And this only shows, and by the way, I mean, I was just talking about how the language of the resolution, of course, did not mention the genocide, is not mentioning the ongoing killing machine, but actually it is mainly focusing on the forced famine, the man-made forced Israeli famine, and the catastrophic humanitarian situation. It did not in any way come close to talking about the genocide, about accountability, about sanctions, all of which are the only way forward today is to have accountability against the oppressor, and the colonizing state of Israel. And as you can see, Israel is waging a war against the world. It seems, with, of course, the I would say interconnected role of the United States, not only in Palestine but also in the region and in many other countries around the world. And so maybe this would lead us to a little bit of explanation of actually what is happening in Palestine and why are we resisting. I mean, the situation in Palestine has for a very, very long time, more than 8 decades, more than 80 years, the Palestinians have been fighting against first the empire and the colonization of the British, and then followed by the colonization of the Israeli Zionist regime, uh, following the outcomes and the aftermath of World War One and Two. So, and the main issue was that for the past 80 years, the discourse on Palestine has been very distorted, and specifically distorted because of the propaganda machine of the United States and the propaganda machine of the Israeli colonial state, which minimizes the situation in Palestine and the colonization of Palestine into a conflict. And this is not a coincidence to talk about the conflict between the Israelis and the Palestinians, making it sound like a two-sided situation that is in fact a colonization. And this is what I would first would like to encourage our audience here, our listeners, that the Palestinian situation is actually a colonization situation. So we are colonized by Israel, and this would make things, I would say, simpler to people to understand, because the colonizing regimes are very much a common ideology that exists and that has been translated into action in many countries around the world, including Asia, Africa, Latin America, and so on. So that is the first thing that we would like to emphasize, because if we keep on diagnosing the situation in Palestine faultly, we will never be able to deal with the proper symptoms correctly. So when people ask us, so what is the solution? If we say it's a conflict, that makes things very complex. But if we say, what is the solution to colonization? I think it was an easily understood idea in the minds of people that colonization only ends in liberation and ending the colonization of this country. And then all the practices that Israel practices against our people, from displacement to ethnic cleansing, to genocide, to apartheid, to occupation, to theft of natural resources, and transfer of the Palestinian people, these all fall under the umbrella of the colonizer. So what we are seeing today, the genocide in Gaza, is just a continuation of the ongoing Nakba. And Nakba, for those who don't know, is when the Israeli state was established in 1948, when in the support of the British colonizer, they paved the way for Zionist militias to take over Palestinian cities and Palestinian villages and kick out more than 80% of the population of Palestine, which at the time was around 800,000 people, were kicked out of Palestine that until this day remain refugees. And this is why Palestinians have one of the biggest refugee exodus in the world. So since then, Palestine, and even before. So one of our biggest revolutions were in 1936. And this was against the British presence in Palestine because of their atrocities against us, because of, and of course, I mean, they call it the mandate. But this is very colonial approach, and it only shows dominance. So since then, Palestinians have been continuing to fight for liberation. Now, what is interesting is, it is very easy to fall into despair today because what we're seeing and what we're witnessing, even that maybe we are only seeing 1% of the horrors that are happening in Gaza and the horrors that are happening in Palestine. But to actually think that we need to also remember that the Palestinians are fighting for the past 100 years, and they are fighting the most powerful powers in the world globally, uh, and they are still surviving. So if I wanted to say something to the people of the world and to the free people of the world that feel that they can't do it, I would say that despite the horrors that we're seeing today, I still, if I zoom out, I look at Palestine and think that we are facing so we are people under colonization that have been uh, repeatedly facing atrocities that are unimaginable. We're facing the Israeli colonizer, the United States hegemony and extreme power. We're facing the European also crackdown and hegemony against our people. We're facing corporate uh, arbitration and attacks against our people. We're facing new media attack against our people. We're facing a crackdown from the globe, basically. And yet, we are still steadfast into bringing dignity and freedom to our people. And this is very important to acknowledge that literally today, like what you saw 3 days, like about a week ago, the United States sanctioned human rights organizations. So this is unprecedented. They're treating us like they treat another superpower. They're treating us as if one NGO is being sanctioned like the way Russia is being sanctioned. So to this level of insane control and dominance to break Palestinians from being able to achieve liberation and their rights. So I would end by saying two things. Yes, the colonizer is very brutal, and yes, they are at the moment one of the most dangerous oppressors in the world because they are also exporting their oppression into the entire world. And two, the solution and the only solution we have today is intersectional struggles and the belief that we together are way much more powerful than the global minority states and mentalities that are only that only fuels their existence with the oppression of others. This we are seeing, unfortunately, also finally, it is unbelievably insane to see that in every place we go. So the Palestine Institute for Public Diplomacy works on alternative diplomacy in the global majority. So we have presence in Latin America. Very soon we will also have presence in East Asia. What we have noticed and seen from our contacts in Brazil, in Colombia, with the indigenous people, with the movements on the ground, is that most of the oppression that is against these people is fueled and actually paid for by Israeli companies, by the Israeli government. Just recently, I was in Argentina with the indigenous people of Patagonia. They are being ethnically cleansed from their territories, what they call our territories, because an Israeli company, a water company that is related to the government, had just now signed an agreement with the government of Argentina to extract their water resources. So they're kicking out and they're killing, and the government have just designated the Mapuche group as a terrorist organization. So you see, and it is everywhere. So everywhere you go, you will find, I am sure in East Asia as well, there is a lot of, the intelligence is owned by Israel. the weaponry supremacy is also owned by Israel. So it is very clear that the oppressor is one. And so the only solution for us to move forward is that we also unite together and support each other into fighting this, into identifying main targets, and into putting our resources together, making sure we coordinate efforts so that we support each other in times of need. And we also lead to other people around the world that it can be possible. Thank you, Zarni, and I'm sorry if I took longer than I should.
It's okay. Thank you so much, Ruler. That some of my friends were texting that your take on the resistance over 100 years of not simply Israeli but Western imperialist forces is truly inspiring. And just if I may, before I hand the floor to my brother Isham, I came from a country, Myanmar or Burma, and the Golda Meir, the late prime minister, settler colonialist from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, of Israel, mentioned that the early bilateral relations between Myanmar and Israel were nothing short of a love affair. That's her words. And Israel has trained Myanmar military, supply weapons over the last 70 years. And just as Israel has done the training and intelligence, gathering, cooperation, weapons export to over 150 countries around the world. So people in Indonesia, or maybe not Indonesia, because Indonesia doesn't recognize the state of Israel, but Nepal, India, other places where local communities are repressed, they are repressed with Israeli weapons technology. And also, I was just, last year at the Philadelphia corridor of the Karim Shalom, the crossing. I heard explosion inside Gaza, with where the Hamas leader was killed, and he was fighting until the last moment. I was just like 1 mile just outside the walls, and I saw like Israeli troops with American weapons, American vehicles coming in and out after rounds of massacre inside. And so, just one word. In year 2025, we have a Western colonial, repression against entire people. This is not about Muslim versus Jews, Christian versus Jews. This is sheer colonization. And I think, I thank Ruler for making it very, very clear. This is not a conflict. This is a colonization. It will only end not with ceasefire, but the end of occupation and the end of genocide. And so, Isham, can you introduce the two comrades from Indonesia?
Well, thank you very much, Zaini. Thank you, all the comrades here. They are. Well, we have seen what happened in Indonesia. They just celebrated their 8 years independence. But what happened is that there's so much what we call the gap between the rich and the poor, and particularly the most important thing is the issue of corruption. And what happened recently, it's just early that there's a massive protest, and there was also almost in Sulawesi, the island, the government building were burned and the parliament building were burned. And I think it's better that our friends and comrades from Indonesia to speak for themselves. I've contacted them and they're willing to speak. I'm not sure whether, and please, our Indonesian comrades, silakan, please explain the struggle of Indonesia. Terangkan apakah dia perjuangan Indonesia dari dulu sekarang dan apa yang berlaku recently. Terima kasih. Go ahead.
Can you also mention your name and introduce yourself briefly, so I don't mispronounce your name? So,
go ahead, Fitra. I think, can start it.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for the time given to us. My name is Fitra. I am a I'm working on a lot of issues regarding agrarian conflict, but yeah, of course, the idea of agrarian reform has never been something that is it's a matter of imperialism, of course, and inequality. And in recent readings, and here I am with Raung Singosari. I think you can address Raung as Raung, yeah. Yeah, so no need for the full name. So we more recently gathered in a bigger situation regarding the escalating conflicts between civil members and the police. So it is often framed. More recently, it was framed as yeah, from the civil society side, it's more like a repression against civil members, against citizens, against the freedom of expression and the freedom to uh, state opinions uh, openly through social media. So we are looking into a lot of silent operations that, of course, it's affected by many dimensions that are happening in Indonesia. Thus, we frame it as the inequality, the prolonging inequality. But before that, I would like to also declare our solidarity, full solidarity with the Palestine freedom. Uh, we recognize deeply that it is indeed colonization, and uh, we might not be seeing a lot of dissenting opinions about that in Indonesia. However, when it comes to also tracing back, because we will talk quite a few about the rebranding of militarism, that it is also, of course, nuanced with many of the informal operations, informal dealings with Israel as a military entity and as an influence in itself that Indonesian military are somewhat connected, uh, but we are not really sure that it is worth mentioning as it is not verified. But I am sure that if we have some kind of more attention on going deeper on these insiders information, it will of course have an impact to how Indonesia government perceives and uses violence to control. So I think for us right now, the current uh, policing of civil freedom in Indonesia is also is I'm wondering if you can show the slides, but it's okay also to just have a quick lookout on the recent news. There are so many things uh, that remain unresolved in Indonesia from regime to regime. So when we say that who controls Indonesia, it's more likely people would still say it's always militarism. So it's always the military, but then they appear with different forms of presence. Yeah. So we are seeing the rebranding in the in in what it's called a docile grandfather. The current president is presented himself as thus, and then the main program was also to address the the lack of nutrition for many of the human resources. So if you look into the the psychosocial dimension, of course, the appeal is to have uh, Indonesia as a bigger force regionally, on internationally, and so to be able to compete, to be able to be these human capitals that the country wants, then we should increase our capacity in many aspects, and that was how the the issue of uh, agrarian reform was addressed. So it was seen, it is these land rights and land grabbing that is closely related to, of course, ethnic cleansing happened, and uh, yeah, occupation of areas that are seen as vacant and can be used the uh, by the oppressors. Say it is between the Java Island, the big Java Island, where the government and most of the ethnic composition of Indonesia is located, uh, are somewhat colonizing other areas, especially on the eastern part of Indonesia. And it's being reproduced right now with the liberalism economical scheme through tourism, and not just from uh, small scale tourism. So it is seen as a also something that President Prabowo Subianto see as something appealing for either the Chinese government and for Trump. So there had been these kind of uh, yeah, criticism, but also with the rise of social media, people were somewhat feeling the the interesting part of dissenting opinions, right, from the government. So for a moment, we feel that we can still fight back, until at one point the dealings between the authoritarian tools, which are the police and the military, they seem to be taking different parts. So if you look into the image, a firm handshake representing the police and military formally cooperate since 2018. So it is not a conspiracy. It was an open declaration that uh, both authoritarian tools, they would be face to face with citizen, showing harmony, and the state projecting strength and unity. So it was already agreed as like the state of Indonesians, the mindset of Indonesians uh, observing that has this kind of sentimentality of how strong our nation can be. But then 7 years later, of course, the backlash is the return to the uh, revision of a special law for the military to take part in 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 the governance and economic, and so they would have dual roles, not just as military members of the military. So we are seeing here informations compiled from many sources, and uh, especially from people on the ground, because then the media is also uh, part of the political parties. Uh, you know how oligarchs operate, and then they would also control the press. So a lot of these findings were layered into how many people should be verifying this? Can we give this to the National Commission of Human Rights? What would be the best way to protect activists on the ground? Because it remains in the fringes, because I see also one of the challenges is through social media protests, there are opportunities that we can organize opinions and gathering them. However, there are also lingering issues of inequality, these problems that, however, uh, how even as if we really want to make it a big movement, there are always challenges in on the ground organizing, because the cycle keeps repeating. But I would like to take note also that perhaps that is still the best way to engage people in this situation of late capitalism, being accepting ourselves as a nation that is uh, framed as a third world country trying to get into the international global uh, dealings that will always uh, marginalize most people in the in the country. So what we're seeing is uh, this the recent happenings are not exactly different from other protests. This is still repeating the cycle, but also we're not sure if we allow these military forces again at this day and age. Would that be uh yeah would that shape some would that be shaping a new type of uh movement for Indonesia? I think that's particularly a view from my generation who did not experience the fall of Suharto in person. Like I was not old enough to understand the process, but for me, even from the time of these past 2 decades, I think I have seen a lot of uh, erupting anger regarding inequality, but there has not been a clear pathway where civil society, in the shape of NGO or in the shape of policy thinkers, that would actually experiment on many things, so we can stop thinking about our own nation and begin to think about the wider aspect of human rights, including direct support to uh, nations like the Palestinians. I think that is all from me. Thank you. I will pass on to Raung.
Yeah, wrong.
Thank you, Fitra, for the introduction about what is happening in Indonesia in general. But I will to give you guys a kind of full of context about what is happening now, why it looks like on the news Indonesian protests looks like really massive and brutal. It's like that. It's not. I will give you like let's fly back to the latest 90s, where the Reformation eras began, where lots of similar demonstration leads by student and merge with all these people apa, people union, workers union, and others merged into demonstration and took down the street. It's also a cause like some of activists also been missing, gone, and killed, leads by this special force. Leads by now known as Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto. Used to be one of the high rank of general leads Indonesian special force at the time. So back to the latest 1998, when every movement leads by student, but it also Indonesia also start to learn more deeply about the ism, the theory of states from many perspectives of ism, like Marxism, Leninism, and everything. But soon, when the new reformation comes, most of those who enforce on that movement also learn something, that there are another alternative in the movement, which leads them to learn about anarchism as well. That's also start to form many of different varieties of methods of protest, organization, and also the way we engage in political ways. Not only with this forum discussion, like having activation in the campus or even outside the campus, but it's getting wide. It's wider. So the discussion about politic social situation, it could be happening anywhere, not only monopolized by students, but it's also almost every levels of people start to questioning about what is happening here, where's our right, what we can do, and how do we can change these kind of things. So from that point, and then it's also marked by the massive movement of this underground music at the time in Indonesia. At the same time, also where's this the theory of another-ism is entered Indonesia. That's how we grow from one centralistic ideology, for example, it's become more decentralized. So the ideas of direct action is also become more familiar. So there's not only one way to protest, but actually there are lots of varieties to protest, to show them our demanding. And then during the latest to 2020, I guess, that's where in the May Day 2020, yeah, where that's the first really big May Day celebration in Indonesia, that causing lots of fire spark, where that also when the authority realized that there are new kind of movement that it's grow really fertile in Indonesia, which now they use as the scapegoat. Not used to be they will in every political turmoil they will try to find scapegoat. previously they will use this communists as a scapegoat, but now it's it's changed to be into this anti-fascist and anarcho-syndicalism, where where that movement is that movement it grows because of the answer from 1998. So it's just uh, yeah, it's grown from that embryo into what we call as this anarcho-syndicalism, anarcho-communism. Yeah. So that's how the method of the method how how the activists organize, how the method of organization also change from conventional way into different ways, into many ways. But also at the same time as well, from the authority perspective, they also upgrading their tactic and strategy. Since also the way we organize things also different, it changed like from the conventional way, like during this the offline agitation and propaganda using this leaflet. But now it's changed to this social media, TikTok, Instagram Live, even YouTube. Yeah, you can now use to agitate, to propaganda, to yeah, to agitate any kind of issues. That also the government, the authorities see that's the potential way for them to mislead all these things. Also to campaign their their what the goals of the policies. And what happened last month, it's we can say it's I think that's the accumulation point where everyone feels like really waiting, since they cannot create a moment to express all this disappointment about their policies, starting from like what the authority, the police do with all these football supporter on the on the early 2021, where 135 of football supporters die because they've been trapped on the stadium of a football stadium in East Java. And then follow after that is how they tackle and manage the protests during omnibus law. And after that, Indonesia Gelap. Not to mention how they also treat all these civilian when they having this kind of what do you call uh, uh I can I can't say in the word because yeah, suddenly I feel blank sometimes. Anyway, so yeah, all these things happen. It not just instantly happen. We've been like trying to bring to use the conventional way to bring up all these kind of issues, but the thing is they're playing tone deaf. Like one of one of the trigger situation is when this people on this representative building, they just passed the bills of tax. They got this uh, what they're rising up their own salary like 100 times multiple from this annual life of Indonesian. So that's also makes more the worst situation. So when that even happened when this online driver bike got crashed by police car. It just started like that, and then everything is like poof. Yeah. So there are also a few different things that change. Like used to be Yogyakarta is a spark up we can use as fire plugs for this movement, but it's not anymore. It changed. So it's moved into the neighborhood, for example, in Central Java. But West Java, Jakarta, and Sulawesi now is leading all these kind of things. So yeah, in terms of all this movement, one thing that we always bring aside that our local issues is also Palestinian issues. It feels like wherever we go down on the street, all of our brothers and sisters Palestinians also come along with us, you know. And this new anomaly what happened now, I said anomaly because it's just it's out of pattern. Like we start using the flags from this anime, like one nation anime bit, or what do we call this? One nation, yeah.
Peace.
Yeah. Well, One Piece, yeah, One Piece, yeah, yeah. It seems like everyone use that because it's representing what is happening and what's their feeling about Indonesia now. There, we refuse to roast our red and white flag. Instead, we rise up all this one piece nation side by the, yeah. So I guess that's for starting, and because I'm kind of like scramble, which one should I
Yeah. Okay.
share with you first? So because there's just too many. I mean, like, yeah. Anyway, so
Th-
yeah, I think.
Thank you, brother Rong Singh. I am aware that I'm asking both of you to cover the entire uprising for over or almost 300 million people in about 16-20 minutes, and you will realize that I'm also very lenient with time because this is your life struggle and we are not exactly academic seminar. And so I appreciate giving the time to explain. um, that we'll come back to you. We've got another 45 minutes to go, and let me invite Dr. Mona Adhikari. She is a senior lecturer at Stirling University in Scotland, and she's currently in Kathmandu, her native country, which she specializes in. And obviously this means a great deal to her because this is what her country is undergoing. Mona?
Hi, thank you so much. Zernu, firstly, I think it was wonderful listening to colleagues from Indonesia. I think there's a lot of shared premise in some of the things that you talked about. So thank you for bringing us all together, and it allows me to perhaps situate Nepal as a part of a broader uprising, and as an academic on this side, also to look at what do these movements mean for conceptions of democracy, conceptions of organizing, conceptions of accountability. So it's been really interesting being a listener, so thank you. So I'll start with what happened, and I think it follows in from the colleagues from Indonesia who've just talked about similar movements. So to start, just over maybe a week or 10 days ago, thousands of young people, Nepali young people, men and women, started protests on grounds of wanting the state to address concerns about corruption, cronyism and clientelism, and cartelling that has been so pervasive to the political economy in Nepal. So the country had been rocketed with multiple corruption scandals, but it had really not systematically addressed those issues. At the background, however, there was a social media ban on grounds that the social media giants like Facebook, Twitter had not registered in Nepal. But this ban was also correlated to the fact that multiple young people had launched movements like hashtag NepoKids, Gen Z movement, call for organizing against corruption, very similar to the protests that we saw in Indonesia, but also the Philippines. And I'll come back to some of that. So the protests really started peacefully, but once the protest went towards the parliament and sort of broke the barricade of the parliament, the state's response was violent. So in one day, 19 young people were shot dead. And in response to the initial violence by the state, the movement turned violent. And that's where we had images of the parliament building being burnt, the Supreme Court being burnt, the seat of the government bureaucracy being burnt. And 10 days later, as facts have started coming in, we find two things to be happening. One, that of course the movement and the call for accountability, call for economic redistribution was genuine, but the movement also was sort of infiltrated by unsavory political elements of the opposition, like you see in most movements, especially one that does not have a defined leader like this one. I think the timing is very important. So I was personally very, very impressed in terms of how much went on in a short span of 48 hours. So this was a movement which took down a government in 48 hours. This was also a movement that after 48 hours, there was some semblance to stability. So the army started patrolling the streets. There was an interim government that was led by the former Chief Justice announced. So much of the semblance, sort of normalcy had sort of returned. Now, I see that both as something that is good, because all of us crave some form of security, some form of normalcy, but also with a little bit of sadness, because I feel 19 people then, and now the death count has increased to over 70. People dying should not be forgotten in such a short span of time. So I look at normalcy in a very dual term as it stands. But I think that is the fact or the descriptor of the movement. And I wanted to go back to the domestic and the international sort of context to this, which and trying to sort of link it to what colleagues from Indonesia have just talked about. So one, that the Nepali state had multiple instances of organized corruption scandals that sort of involved people at the highest echelons of bureaucracy, at the highest echelons of political power. And a lot of these were tried in courts. There was a lot of public evidence out in public. These were brought to the court systems, and a lot of them had very scathing indictment of the government. However, a lot of the punishment was served either by high-level or low-level bureaucrats or some political leaders, with majority of political leadership coming unscathed. So the government retained its power despite systemic forms of corruption. There was one where over 250 people, a cartel of 250 people, joined up to sell government-owned land in the name of private individuals. So all this government-owned land was transferred to individuals. So, and this was not the only one. There were multiple, some with international significance. But all of these sort of didn't really, it did come in the news, it then went off. So it really went unaddressed. And I think that has been a problem. Now, in a democratic system, there are really two ways in which you to sort of you convey your dissatisfaction with the political system. One, you vote people out of power. And in Nepal, we have periodic elections, but regardless of who you vote, the three political parties come together, divide the spoils. There's some form of a power sharing formula, and they come back to power. So regardless of who you vote, there is it's the same three political parties with some of their affiliates in the smaller parties that become the government at one point or the other point between the two elections. So that formula is sort of away from the, sort of rejecting your government based on electoral votes is something that has not worked in Nepal. The second is you have a lot of constitutional bodies, independent constitutional bodies, including the judiciary. In Nepal, we also have something called the Commission for Investigation of Abuse of Authority, or CIAM. Now, what has happened in the last 10, 20 years is all of these bodies have been manned by political parties and their affiliates. So every time a court case is brought in, political parties are forgiven. There's a very early attempt to sort of brush it up under the carpet. Once it comes out, there's a minimal sentencing. Half of it does not get to the court system. The other half that goes is never tried. The ones that are tried are not the political leaders who really matter. So really, you've lost two primary ways of dissenting in a democratic political system in Nepal. So when you don't have any other avenues left, the street power, organizing in the streets, is the only power that has been left to this generation of advocates, this generation of young people, really. But also with regards to, along with corruption, there's also a sea inequality, like huge inequality that we see in Nepal. And this also came especially with the rise of social media, how young people were talking about, well, that is just a daughter or a son of a political leader. How can that person afford this lifestyle? Whereas an average Nepali today is battling inflation, unemployment, and immigrating out of the country, going to Gulf, Malaysia, and everywhere else that you can find a job in is the only lifeline. So Nepal heavily relies on remittance. That sea inequality has sort of been unaddressed for a very long time. And that is the domestic context in which we find this organizing. However, I also think that there is that international context that's been not as well talked about. So how the movement was framed, like the Gen Z movement, hashtag Nepo Kids, I think was very similar to what we saw in the Philippines, what we saw in Indonesia. So as constitutional lawyers would talk about constitutional borrowing and institutional learning and borrowing, we do see a lot of learning and borrowing in movements. And I do think that the social media space has sort of almost increased that power to learn, borrow, and see the potential of what can be done. And so I think there's a lot of resonance to the movement in Indonesia, the one in Philippines that we see in Nepal. But also I wanted to sort of put a context to that. So this is a movement. Things have changed. We now have an interim government. There's been, like I said before, there's been a semblance of normalcy that's returned. Nepali people are not, it's not a foreign idea to find yourself in different movements. I hear a lot of political scientists talk about movement in every generation. In Nepal, we're not spared the luxury of a generation. It's every 10 years. So in 2005, 2006, we had a pro-democracy movement along with a peace process. In 2015, we had a movement to sort of address the constitutional settlement that had come through. A new constitution had come through. It didn't live up to the ideas of the peace process, and there was dissenting voices, and there was a movement. Again, a lot of people killed. And here we are in 2025 in another movement. However, there are at least three things that are distinct to this movement, and I think that also ties to what colleagues from Indonesia were talking about. All the prior movements in Nepal, be it 1990, 2005, 2015, were about political change, from an authoritarian system to a democratic system, from an exclusive system to a slightly inclusive one, from a centralized system to a more federal system. But the movement this time is about economic redistribution. Note that economic redistribution has been talked about in all prior movements, but somehow it always, as things move ahead, it almost always has become a footnote. So this time, I think young people have put that in the front to talk about accountability, to talk about economic redistribution of the state. How can it be that the top 1% live a life of luxury, while Nepal receives around 10, 20 coffins every day from GCC countries? These are laborers that can't bear the heat and die. This can't be the normal. So I think economic redistribution and accountability coming to the fore is a very distinct part of the movement that we've not seen before. Second, I would say that most movements have always had political parties at the hot seat or the center of all movements. In this movement, we've actually seen a demand to dissociate from political parties. So in the interim government, the only acceptable candidates were people who were unaffiliated to at least the primary three parties, because there was a disenchantment with political parties, and that boils down to some amount of disenchantment with the democratic system as we know it. So apolitical technocrats are seen better off than political parties. And I don't know what that means for democracy as we understand it in the long term. And lastly, I think there was a lot of the times in different movements, this is across the world, but Nepal as well, the focus has been on political organizing, political parties. But as we saw, a lot of the people attacked economic, political business houses, corporate bodies. And that is in response to this economic political linkages, this cartelling that has taken place, where a corporate entity can pay off its seat in the parliament or also pay off to buy policies that are favorable to it. So we saw a lot of some of the richest people in Nepal's houses being burnt. And I think, of course, that raises an economic question. For economic players in Nepal today, it's a question of damn if you do, damn if you don't. You need the political parties to get things through. But once you associate yourself with political parties, you lose popular legitimacy. What do you do? But I think that talks a lot about the cartelling that there is, the lobbying, that the power of the business lobby, how intrinsic it is to political organizing, and what does that mean for the economic system that we might sort of see going forward. So I think those are broadly the three new things that this movement has brought forth, but also to end to say that, well, political movements have not been new in Nepal, but I think there are some things very, very distinct about this political movement. And I think that has traveled all the way from Southeast Asia because issues have tended to be the same. You have countries Nepal is on the way to become a middle income country. So you actually have your GDP actually rise, so the macroeconomic indicators are doing fairly well, but it comes at a cost of huge inequalities. So how do you balance these two trends? And I think that is something that we're likely to see in many other countries as well. I'll end that here, Zerni, and we can go on to talk about comparable insights later.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Mona. The next speaker will be Rone Salwe. Introduce yourself and speak on the both the Rohingya and Myanmar issues.
Well, thank you so much, Kozani, and thank you so much, all brother and sister, sharing your story. First of all, I would like to offer my solidarity with you all. And we hear you, but the problem is the world, the international community, that they they show the concern, but they never try to solve the problem. That is why our suffering continue. So since we have the limited time now, we are going to finish in half an hour. So I will not speak much. So let me begin with the Myanmar issue. So Myanmar has always been the military, ruling by the military. Only 5 years, the civilian government sharing the power with the military. They ruled the country from 2015 to 2020. So let me begin from the 2021 after the coup. So it is same like the Indonesia and the Nepal. There was the peaceful protest by the especially Generation Z. They lead the protest. All the protests were the innovative, unlike the one when I was young in 1988. It's completely different. So this peaceful protest turned to the armed revolution because the military killed the protester, and the military is not going to convince whatever they are demanding. So it turned to the armed revolution. The armed revolution is still ongoing. So since then, at least 7,000 civilians were killed by the Myanmar military. Among them, 1,500 are women, about 1,000 are the children, and around 30,000 were arrested by the military. Still around 22,000 are in detention. Among them, 4,500 women, and the children are also in the detention, around 250 there. And meanwhile, 172 political prisoners were sentenced to death. So a few of them are already executed, including the four prominent student leaders from the 1988 generation. So the military is keep committing the crime. Since then, the crime they are committed are beyond our imagination, like burning the town, villages, and also the carrying out the airstrike daily basic in the uh, all the area in central Myanmar, and also in the area controlling by the ethnic resistance organization. And since last year, the military enforced a law of the conscription. At least 65,000 young people were forcibly conscripted. And in these 4 years, 3.5 million internally displaced. Some of them are at the border area in Thailand border, the Indian border, and also the young people are keep fleeing because of this conscription law. Every day they are forcing them to be conscripted. And while this armed revolution is ongoing and the armed resistance is ongoing, at least 50%, more than 50% territory are controlling by the armed resistance group. But the problem is as I mentioned earlier, the support by the international community. And like in Ukraine and in Myanmar, nobody got the support from all this country. So they are always saying, we are standing with you, we are supporting you. But in reality, there is nothing support. The support, mean the material support, is very much important, because this armed resistance group, they are facing the strongest institution and allies armed power in the country. They have the Air Force, they have support from the China and the Russia. So, and also India is supporting, and there are many other countries. As Dr. Zani mentioned, the Israel, they are also supporting. So with the biggest armed power they are facing, without support is not going to long last. But while this armed resistance group are struggling, the Myanmar military is going to hold the election soon, in this year, in December, phase by phase. And as they are planning to hold the election, they are now trying to reclaim the territory controlling by the ethnic armed resistance organization. So there are the offensive ongoing, and the airstrike, as I mentioned, every day, this happening. And after the election, it is like the military is the same like happened in the 2010. The military general, they changed the uniform, and then they became the president and the prime minister and the minister. So the same thing is going to happen, and the wall is like even the UN organization. As of now, the UN itself saying we don't accept that this military coup, and the Western country, ASEAN country, but still they are dealing with this military. UN organization are handing their credential, and also even the US President Trump sent a letter addressing to this military coup leader for the tariff. So it is a kind of the legitimacy. So from the ASEAN also traveling to Thailand, China, Russia, these all are the legitimacy. But after the election, since they will change the uniform and wear the civilian dress, they will be seen as the civilian. It will be normalized. So all this, the young people who give their life, everything, they are not studying, they are at the border fighting. Many, they lost their life. And the wall, yes, due to the lack of the real solidarity and their principle, the people keep suffering, and the suffering of these especially young people in Myanmar, that will continue even this after the election. So now let me talk about the Rohingya. Well, you know very well that we have been facing genocide for almost 5 decades since the early 1970s. And in 2017, the largest exodus happened. Now 1.2 million Rohingya are living in very dire condition in Bangladesh for more than 8 years now, and another 130,000 are confined into the camp, exactly like the concentration camp in Rakhine State capital city since 2012, more than 13 years now. So still, our suffering is continue while the military was sole perpetrator, aiding by the Rakhine politician, extremists, and now we have got the two perpetrator. Military was the primary, and the now secondary is the Arakan Army. Arakan Army is known as the armed resistance organization, resisting the oppression of the Myanmar military, fighting against the Myanmar military, and also now within 15 years they grew, and they are seen as the largest armed group in the country. They are predominantly the Rakhine Buddhists, and since they have the hatred against the Rohingya, in late 2018, they came into the Rakhine state, and since 2019, they committed the crime against the Rohingya. But we kept silent for the sake of the peaceful coexistence, since they have been doing PR campaign that they respect the Rohingya human right and this and that. But since last year, after they acquire, they controlling the territory, and after controlling the Rohingya territory, particularly Budilong and the Mauna Township, they burned the villages. They forcibly displaced the people, the Rohingya people. There were the significant massacre in Budilong Township on 2nd May 2024 in one small village. In one single day, they killed at least 600 people, including the children, babies, and the elderly, and the disabled, pregnant women. Nobody they spare. This kind of small, like, you know, the 100, 150, 50, 70. This happened in the other villages. And also on August 5th, 2024, at the Nav River bank, Boradu, the Bangladesh, thousands of people were gathering, trying to flee to Bangladesh because of their persecution, their oppression. And the Arakan Army dropped them the drone bomb and killed at least 300. So last year alone, in the name of fighting against the Myanmar military, they killed at least 2,500 Rohingya in Rakhine State. Within 1 year, additional 150,000 Rohingya had to flee to Bangladesh to seek refuge there because of their, you know, their oppression. So for us in Myanmar, we are facing two armed powers. One is the Myanmar military, another is this Arakan Army. And we don't have the armed power, we don't have the political power. We are just relying on the solution will be given by the international community. So more than 8 years now, nothing is happening. But now, I think in 10 days, on 30th of this month, there will be the UN high-level conference on Rohingya and other minority. But we are not expecting much because UN is failing, international community failing. You know more than us, you have been suffering as well. So, but at least the humanitarian situation, because funding cut by the US, that will be addressed, and at least there will be a resolution. But to implement this resolution will not be easy, because we know that how many resolutions UN adopted and never implemented. So this, I think, and another one thing, this is very much important. In Myanmar, before the 2021, we Rohingya were the most hated because you know my brother Dr. Zani, he has been outspoken. He is a scholar. You know, he has been fighting for us. So he suffered a lot. I suffer a lot. Many other activists as well, and we were the most hated people. And in 2021, when they need international support, they stood with the Rohingya, and they apologize us. Now, when Arakan army began the oppressing the Rohingya, we are speaking, we will never keep silent when our people are being oppressed by any group. It doesn't matter whether military or the civilian, our work is to speak up. Now, the same situation repeating again. They are hating us, and the Myanmar media, all the media, I will not spare anyone, because I have been observing all the media. All the media, 100%, they are against the Rohingya. They are always one-sided. When the Rohingya are persecuted, oppressed by any group, they always take the side of the perpetrator. In 2017, they took the Myanmar military side. Now, since 2024 until now, they are taking the side of the Arakan army. So in Myanmar, we are isolated, and whenever they need any, the international support, they will show some kind of solidarity. This is the fake solidarity, I would say, because as of now, the national unity government, they claim themselves they are the union government. They are only the legitimate government. Of course, we also recognize them, and they have the people mandate, because in 2020 election they got the they got the landslide victory. So, but they have the moral authority, and also being they claim themselves government, they have to speak up against whatever we are suffering. They know that they are completely silent, and the media are portraying it as if we are the bad guy, they are the good guy. That, like, portraying like Arakan army is the angel. They will never touch any Rohingya. So this is the situation. But for us, since our majority are in Bangladesh, uprising, nothing that will helpful, only the advocacy. But inside the country, only like about 400,000 are remaining. 130,000 are confined into the camp since 2012. The remaining are at the hand of the Arakan army. So revolt and the uprising are impossible for us, because we are at the end of hand of this perpetrator, and also solidarity from our countrymen. This is impossible at this moment. So our situation, I would say, a bit worse than other, the oppressed people. Thank you so much. I will stop here. I think I took a lot of time.
Yeah, don't worry, don't worry. I think we only have 12 more minutes, and what I would like to do is extend another 15 minutes. And if any of the speakers have to go, you may be excused. But if you can stay on, that'd be great, because I want to give return to the Palestine, Indonesia, and also Nepal to have their own last words. But on Myanmar issue, I will say this. I've been involved in this almost 40 years. I started being active overseas as a student, at the age of 24, and I'm 62 now. And I am far less inspired by Myanmar's own mainstream so-called, Nueu revolution, than say like a Palestinian movement that has been going on for over 100 years. And I will say this officially. I have repeated this on so many occasions. We can have an armed uprising. We can have a people power uprising, but we cannot have a democratic or any type of revolution unless we are committed to some set of ideals and principles, right? And when Nesangwin talk about the Myanmar media, Myanmar language media that support the anti-junta uprising, and also the other anti-junta organizations, they are with, like Aung San Suu Kyi and the previous government of National League for Democracy. They are with the, they share the same Islamophobic fear and hatred towards the majority Muslim Rohingya. And the same applies to ethnic resistance organizations. They may not be directly involved in the repression of Rohingya, but they keep quiet when other ethnic armed resistance organizations like Buddhist Rakhine's representative, Arakan Army, are perpetrating crimes against humanity and genocidal acts against the Rohingya. We cannot call ourselves revolutionaries unless we are operating under some kind of ideals and principles. And number one ideal is empathy for other oppressed groups. And I have felt that sort of like human solidarity and principledness among the Palestinian groups, both non-violent and others who are involved in different type of armed resistance struggles against Israel. So I think that this is something that needs to be discussed. It doesn't matter whether it's Generation Z or 80-year-old a veteran of the previous revolutions. That Myanmar is suffering from the self-inflicted racism. And we cannot call ourselves Democrats. I mean, you can be majoritarian Democrats, but the conception of democracy has to have an inclusion of everyone, irrespective of race or faith or ethnicity that exists within a national boundary. And so that's my own single comment. But I'd like to invite my brother Ishamuddin Rice to share his thoughts on Malaysia's struggle, unfinished, for reform and democratization.
Well, friends and comrades, what happened now? What's happened in Indonesia? What happened in Nepal? What happened in Philippines? You remember 2011 when Muhammad Bauzazi burned himself in Tunisia. It created Arab Spring. And now what happened, as I look at it now, there is an Asian Spring or ASEAN Springs happening in Indonesia, first in Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Nepal, and now in the Philippines, as the same things happen in Malaysia. Well, Malaysia, after the reformation, after the mass protest, is still at the same thing again. The crisis is still going on. I mean, as just now our comrades from Palestine was saying about the Israeli. Yes, about this, Malaysia claimed to be an Islamic country, yet it sold SOLD 39 of the airport to BlackRock, which is a Zionist entity, the biggest supplier of weapons for the Israeli. It now is bombing Gaza. This is the claim of the Malaysian government itself, which claimed to be progressive, which claimed to be Islamic, and this is what happened. At the same time, also, Mossad is operating everywhere in Southeast Asia, and in Singapore, Mossad have the biggest headquarters for Southeast Asia, and that is the situation. But what is happening now, I'm really happy that Indonesia, let's look at it, just now our friend from Indonesia mentioned the one piece, the Luffy with the hat, with the straw hat is moving. And this is an anime from Japan. It becomes the symbol of General Z that is striking now. Yes, if we call I'm the generation of the 60s, this was the symbol that time, peace in the Vietnam War. But now it's different as Gen Z is coming in with all this, what we call this, the one piece, and it's everywhere. The flag is also in Indonesia. Flag is flying in Nepal, in Kathmandu. It's also flying in Paris, and recently it's also flying in Sydney. So what's happening now is that I think globally we are in a crisis, and at the same time, let me tell you, October is the ASEAN Summit meeting. Our friend, the King of America, is coming. He's been invited. I'm not sure whether Trump will be coming or not, but invitation is being sent there, being sent to ASEAN, because the ASEAN Summit will be held there at the end of October. So we will see whatever the Malaysia, whether they're going to welcome him with a big protest like 2-3 days ago in the United Kingdom when Trump was visiting, been invited by King Charles, and now we'll see. So this situation there. And Malaysia, yes, it looks as if stable. No. What happened is that the new government have taken over. As a matter of fact, is worse than the last government. All the controlling they have used what we call the MMC, which control the internet. There's one thing, a lot of people, their account have been squashed, their account have been spent, and at the same time they are also the seditious acts. There have a lot of been used. People, I have myself, my houses have been raided. They came to raid my computer. At the same time, recently, 3 or 4 weeks ago, I've been again called to the police headquarters because I've said something about the Prime Minister in a speech during a protest. So this is what happened. But now, currently, one major issue is happening in the East Coast of Sabah. What happened is that, unfortunately, a young girl of the age of 13 died. She was found dead on the floor. And there was a lot of commotion, not sure what is really happening now. The inquisitor. What happened now? There's a massive protest. Every town in the Sabah, in the province of Sabah, there's a protest. People are not happy of the explanation of the government. At the same time, what is happening now is that the social media is playing a major role. It plays a major role in Indonesia. It plays a major role, like the professor just now said, in Nepal, and in Malaysia, it plays a major role now. It's both information and misinformation. So this is going on now. The protest, the inquest is going on. We are not sure. But I'm telling you, what is really happening now is that the trust, the public trust toward politicians is become less and less. The people, the ordinary people, Mr. Dick, Tom and Harry, Abdul, Dollah and Chin are running away, and they want the protest. As a matter of fact, any protest now to be organized, the people realize it. They wanted to be non-political organizer. They don't want, like in Nepal, people doesn't want politicians to lead the protest because they have something like so now. So I'm so happy that, for example, in Sri Lanka, in Bangladesh, and now in Nepal, they had invited people outside the politics to lead the country. This is a new thing, and I think the ASEAN or the Asian Spring is coming out. It will continue very soon. Indonesia again, and the Philippines last week there's a protest. So this continue. So I hope, for me, I'm a believer of street protest. There's only one way in the third world country to show our dissatisfaction toward the oppression is by coming to the street. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I think, as you know, in the US, UK, France, and across Europe, the governments that claim to represent the best of humanity, wave the flag of human rights and democracy and humanism, they have rediscovered their root. Their root is theft, loot, hypocrisy, murder, land grab, and Palestine is the prime example. After Columbus set sail in 1490s, and so for 500 years, they have developed different norms and law, but they refuse to apply the law when their interests are at stake in Palestine. I think it's really important for us in Far East, Southeast Asia, and South Asia to reconnect with Palestine. Palestine is part of Third World. Palestine is part of the revolutionary traditions, going back to Bandung. And yeah, carry on.
Yeah, I have one question to our comrade from Palestine. Recently, there was an OIC emergency meeting in Doha after the bombing of Qatar. What is actually happening now? What is the position of the Palestinian vis-a-vis the two-state solution, vis-a-vis Mahmoud Abbas of the Palestinian Authority, and also what is the position of the Arab nation from Masr, Egypt, Syria, Lebanon? What are the Arabs themselves are doing? We never hear anything at all. Are they with the Zionists or are they with the Palestinians? This must be made clear to the world and to the other. So this is my question to our comrade in Palestine.
Yeah. Let me ask Rula to give her final thoughts on Palestine, and then I will invite two activists from Indonesia to give their final thoughts briefly. And I think Mona has to leave fairly soon. And so if she wants to say a few words. Mona, do you want to take like maybe like 2 minutes, and then I'll give the floor to Rula, and then she can respond to Hisham's questions about whether the Arab world, is really supporting the Palestinian struggle, or are they in cahoot with the Zionists?
Thank you, Zerni. I need to go. I'm sorry, but I think I'm looking forward to Rula answering Hisham's question because so yes, I'm happy to trade off my 2 minutes for that. Thank you.
Rula?
Okay, well, thank you very much for that question. It comes very timely. I have just two comments before. I don't think I wouldn't refer to us as the third world, because we're not. We're actually the global majority, and our causes are really shaping the world in terms of dignity, human rights, freedoms, and continuation of struggle for a better world and great civilizations. In relation to the question about the Arab-speaking countries, so it is very important for people to understand that the people of these countries is one thing, and the regimes of these countries is another. Now, we also know that the Arab-speaking countries were divided by the colonizers. So basically, the division was between France and the United Kingdom, where they divided the different countries, and also with the partition plans, and also each country had a specific. They interfered in the constitutions of these countries. They interfered in what they call the post-colonial situation, and of course, for them, they always had this rhetoric of the mandate. And once the people are ready to rule themselves, they would leave. This is the way the colonizer is always framing it. So since then, the governments and the regimes of these countries have been dictatorships, have been authoritarians, have been in very much aligning their interests with the United States interest. And this is exactly what you know and see about the Gulf countries, what we know and see about the adjacent countries to Palestine as well. So the people are in one place, and the governments are in another. And I always receive this question: why are these Arab countries not doing anything in adjacent to you? And I say, well, because even if they want to, which in many countries we have seen, Egypt, for example, one of the most important countries in the region, the people are so afraid to even write something online because of the dictatorship that is ruling them, because of the oppression against the people, because of the situations of the people being imprisoned for any action, and so on. So these are authoritarian regimes that definitely do not have a nationalistic agenda, that do not have a liberatory agenda, and do not feel that the threat of Israel is not only for Palestine, but is actually mainly to the region and secondly to the world. So what happened in Qatar was a very clear message from the Israelis and the Americans that all the money that they have been paying for the US to protect them has been for nothing. And and we should know that some of the biggest military bases in the world are actually in the Gulf countries. These countries are very tiny. They have populations of 1 million, 2 million people. That's it. And then the rest are military bases. So I think what happened yesterday and the day before I think it was yesterday, the agreement between the Saudis and the Pakistan is a very clear sign that they are starting to understand, despite the fact that this has been alarmed, this has been said to them in many spaces. Many political analysts have been raising the flags that you cannot basically trust administrations that are based on dominance, colonization, oppression, like the United States government or the many of also European states, or let's just call it as it is, the global minority. Their governments cannot be trusted. Their democracies are extreme hypocrisies, and we have nothing to learn from them but to how to fight the oppression that they transfer to the world. And if that is the civilization that they want to teach us, then no, we would rather be uncivilized than civilized in this manner that they preach. Now, in relation also to the people, there is a boiling effect in the region. Like the people who are seeing what is happening to my people, to our people, they are. We can sense and we can feel the rage that is in the region. We have seen it in action. So, for example, boycotts are very strong in those countries, specifically in Egypt and Jordan, and so on. Of course, Syria is a very different situation. Also the interference of the U.S. In those regions, and not only the U.S. but many other states as well, is very important. Now, when we get to the Palestinian Authority is also a subcontractor of the colonizer, and this is very important to understand for many people. We call it the subcontractor of the colonizer, and this is not unique to Palestine. This is a situation where the colonizer, when they colonize a piece of land, they also find a certain people that can benefit from being in a privileged situation that is given to them by the colonizer, so that they would actually act on their behalf. And this is exactly what we have been seeing in many cities like Jenin, Tulkarem, Nablus, which are in the West Bank, that the Palestinian forces, unfortunately, went into it. It is the first time in the Palestinian struggle history that a Palestinian force is jointly attacking Palestinians with the Israeli military occupation forces. So imagine we are getting, and this is the clearest example of where we are today. And this is very also important that they do not represent the Palestinians. We have not had any healthy political life in ages. Actually, we did not have elections. Not that elections means that there is democracy, by the way, but we haven't had elections. The parliament has been dissolved. We don't have a parliament. We don't have parliamentarians. We don't have politicians. So this is how we're operating. So the only group and the only community that exists today, let's say in a more structured manner, is the civic movement. The rest is very much targeted, and also the civic movement is very much targeted. But even in we were about to have elections in 2021. 30 parties were emerged in that process. Just 2-3 days, almost 1 week before the elections, the president Mahmoud Abbas canceled the elections, saying that the Israelis did not give a permit for the election to happen in Jerusalem, which of course was just a justification that he used. And surprisingly, just after the elections were canceled, the 2 weeks after, we have seen a mass arrest operation against everyone that actually wanted to head a party and run in the elections. They were actually put in prison. They were incarcerated by the Israeli occupation forces, and the rest were detained by the Palestinian forces. So the situation also and this leads us to the two-state solution and the recognition trend that is now happening in the world. People think this is a good thing. Let me explain it very simply. It's not. Do you know how many states have recognized the state of Palestine? More than 145 states have recognized the state of Palestine. Did this stop the genocide? No. Did this stop any atrocities and the insanity of the Israeli colonizers' oppression in Palestine? No. What this means is that, yes, you can recognize the state of Palestine, but what are you actually recognizing? At this current moment, recognition is not the priority. The priority is ending the genocide. The priority is ending the occupation. The priority is sanctions, cutting ties with Israel, opening forcibly opening all the borders so that humanitarian aid can enter, not delegitimizing our parties, because by criminalizing and stamping our parties as terrorist parties, this means that we are being killed politically. We cannot even resist in any manner. All the types of resistance that the Palestinians have used, whether armed resistance or non-armed resistance, have been criminalized. Everything has been criminalized, which leads us to the insanity of which we are living today. So the two-state solution is a very is a distraction that France and now Saudi Arabia are, in the New York Declaration, they are adopting the situation of let's recognize the state of Palestine. And if you read the declaration, it's all about criminalizing the groups on the ground in Gaza. So, and not only in Gaza, but also in Palestine. So, and also they only mentioned the Israeli prisoners in Gaza, but no mention of the Palestinian political prisoners that have been, and it is the first time also in the Palestinian political prisoners history that we have over 70 people being killed under torture. So 70 people were killed in torture in prisons these past 2 years, and this is the first time it happens on such a wide scale. And so what we need is not recognition. And also, by the way, just somebody having the sense of entitlement to come and tell Palestinians what the solution for their situation should be is by itself extremely colonial. We are sick of people telling us what we need to do and not to do. The situation is only going to be better if we treat the root causes of the situation, which is the colonization. It is not about humanitarian aid. And by the way, many East Asian countries have been very much proud of their aid to Palestine. And I am also, tired of having to say that if you want to be partnered in our struggle to end the oppression, not just for Palestine, but for the world, and join the train of liberation, then you have to be able to take risks. If you want to and risk means that you actually support what actually matters to stop this insanity. It is not about sending water and food and tents. Yes, that is important, but this is what states like many states, specifically in Eastern Asia, is using to say we are supportive of the Palestinian cause, and so they send 1 million, 2 million to humanitarian aid. That is fine, but you also need to take action that actually matters, that actually make change on the ground. So the two-state, one-state solution is something I think that needs to be left to the Palestinians after liberation. So once we are liberated, I think we, the Palestinians, will decide if we want one state, two states, 17 states. I don't actually know what my people want. The second thing is recognition is only now being used to kind of like dim the hate that we're seeing in the streets. So we see European countries, because there has been demonstrations for over 2 years now, and huge demonstrations. And by the way, they call it democracy when their people are shouting for something and the governments are doing the total opposite. I don't know what kind of democracy that is in this global minority country, to be honest. But in any case, we see that they tell them, okay, we will recognize the state of Palestine, and people are happy about it. So it is dangerous to think that that is enough. It is not enough. What needs to happen today is very clear. States have legal obligations. It is not charity. These are legal obligations to stop continuing any kind of support or relationship with a genocidal state. Is that very difficult to understand? I don't know. I mean, it's pretty clear. We are seeing some states that are taking very bold decisions, such as the Colombian state, such as the South African state. But beyond these two, of course, I mean, in the region, we are also seeing, well, Lebanon and Yemen and Iraq and Syria, and these are all targets. So the dynamic is different. Israel is colonizing these other states as well. They are in Syria, they are in Lebanon, they are in Iraq, they are also planning to have this, the map of bigger Israel that we are seeing. And this they don't need, I mean, they have been saying their intention for a long time. So what we need today is clear, and I do invite your audience to start thinking that the Palestinian Authority is not the representative of the Palestinian people. Today we are seeing a civic movement that is emerging beautifully. Despite the horrors that we are facing, there is a movement, and it is also beautifully transcending in the world. So I don't think that it is a coincidence what is happening in Asia. I think it is all connected to how the world order is changing. And this is starting and continuing also because of Palestine and what is happening in Palestine. People saw that if people under blockade that have been living in the worst situation for the past 100 years is up against the United States and Israel, then we can also do it. So I think there is this understanding, and there is a shift that we are seeing in the world that we need to consolidate, we need to think about, and we need to increase our coordination again, and our proper solidarity that is based on action and not only based on statements and rhetoric.
Yeah, thank you.
Zaki.
I will ask the two Indonesian colleagues to share their thoughts, and keep it short. And we'll wrap it in the next 5 to 10 minutes. And thanks for staying. And and also, let me make an advertisement. That in the next 7 days or 10 days, we will host a anti-colonialist dialogue. Why it's important for states to start organizing themselves against what has clearly re-emerged as the colonial West. Yeah, and we cannot accept the subjugated life, because either it's life with liberty, or struggle in death. And so I think we don't need to be radical, but the situation demands that the only moral position in this kind of extremely murderous, exploitative Western colonial world, the only moral position is being radical and being revolutionary. Yeah, and so we need to connect all the dots and start working and in coordination with different struggles across different continents. In Latin America as well, US is now targeting Venezuela, and they will target Colombia as well, and they've targeted South Africa, and any state that has supported Palestine, that they are targeting. And so I think we the people, and they have these murderous corporate states, and this is a struggle that everyone has to join in. Two brother and sister from Indonesia, and then I think I will give Isham the last word, and Nisalman, I'll skip you.
It's okay.
Well,
yeah.
Well done. I mean, free Palestine. Yeah. Wow. I totally agree with you. There's nothing you can there's more action now. Stop this bullshit about statement or anything. So as an entire fascist part of movement, I think I would say to all my friends who still believe in street poster, I guess, be adaptable with the situation, dynamic on the situation. whether you would choose silence or be more attractive, offensive. So I guess, and then also know your brothers and sister, who's your right, who's your left, because somehow there will be a time when you cannot rely on this conventional device. So you have to know truly your brothers and sister, especially when you still believe in the street postal as a way to speak our mind. So at the end of the words, I say FIFA Palestine.
Yeah, Petra?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's very kind, and it's always fascinating to see how we are connected. Thank you.
Yeah, likewise, I think for me, I still have a lot to understand from the previous movements and also the ongoing process. If this promises a new world order, I mean, I am witnessing also the shift in social media on how the Rohingya people, the Palestinians, they are framed as refugees entering Indonesia, and with characteristics that I think Indonesia has succeeded in developing this kind of a state of mind that we are somewhat different from others. Yeah, there's always that nation building that for me is unclear, remain unclear. Yeah, we are differentiating one another based on ethnicity, based on tribal tendencies, and based on, of course, uh, which country came to where, because perhaps lack of confidence on admitting that we are part of the third world or not, and then accepting that, yeah, well, we have to take in refugees from war-inflicted countries, something like that, and then not really understanding why these policies are made as is. And because there's always a stagnation, I'm speaking on behalf of my generation who seems to be cut off from this kind of understanding that civil society works differently from, I mean, what we call civil society is the NGO, the non-governmental organizations that were actually people who, well, I think there's kind of a framing that it is to tame our strategies on the ground. I don't mean to diminish all the policy building efforts and all of the all of these attempts to build this democratic country or state. But I think what we are facing right now on the ground is that we don't have clear directions on how to understand that this means we are being tamed. We have this list of long demands, and the best we can advocate among our own friends is just how do we prolong this momentum. This is not something we should be discussing right now. I think we should just be on the ground all the time to understand what is being expected by people who have been lacking in voice, who doesn't have channels in understanding why do I still struggle in my whole life, something like that. We don't have any political education, and the only exposure to politics is every 3 years before the election. So it's electoral politics, and you get all these envelopes distributed in villages, and that's your only exposure to politics. Even if you don't elect, you don't know why. some people who are way out of the. So when the SDGs came, one of the programs developed by NGOs are ensuring people have the right to elect, but nothing precedes that. So you're just being given an ID card. So you're entitled of an ID card right now as an indigenous community, and you are automatically part of Indonesia, which is like a colonizing state towards the indigenous communities. So these are like understandings that I think should be passed on from generations that we are missing a lot. And yes, I am more exposed to strategies and tactics that are so-called used from other countries, like from the Rohingya movement, and then the Palestinian movement, and also through these online channels, but not as much that I would love to get from about my own country. So the resourcing commons, I think it's also important to have this language that could cross border and could amplify that. I think I would like to highlight the statement that if this is towards another world order that we can actually contribute as part of the non-governing agents, then I think we should be the one writing our collective history, and not part of that the colonizing countries who are only interested in, of course, like resource exploitations and everything like that. So I think we need to also develop mutual protection in order to be able to have this process of exchanging resources, of amplifying our own ground movements and everything, and to dismantle the idea that you need to reach a certain level in like the normal hierarchy system, like you're part of this global network, something that you can access this kind of conversation. I think it should be in every layer, and I'm sure that it's tough because there's a lot of distraction, so many distraction on social media, on the internet, and we are talking like this. And I agree with no excessive statement as gestures. Just if something needs to be moved on, people should think less and just amplify. We need to have that kind of agreement, I think, and have that trust on the people that we like. For you to say that this is not the two state issue, I think we should just accept it as is and not question it. That kind of manner is very rare these days, I think. And also, we don't have to measure the political consequences of that. And to actually maintain that, I see that we need mutual protection as well. And that could be something that is worth considering in terms of organizing on the ground and online. Like that could reframe a lot of international meetings on human rights, I hope. And of course, eventually the mutual aid to support all of these activities. So I think these are the things that we need to, instead of being in that existential question on how to prolong the momentum and how to actually succeed in revolution. That's all from me.
Thank you so much, Petra. And we have at least three generations in this conversation, and also the Isham is from the 1960 generation. He's our grand old man, and so you will have the last word. So Isham, like 5 minutes, and then Rula has to leave.
Okay, I think the struggle must continue. The Asian Spring must continue. Indonesia, Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Malaysia, and Thailand must continue. The crisis continue. And what is FORSEA is doing is very good. And the next time the program is that to consolidate, and at the same time we realize it just now. Our friend from Sri Lanka, from Nepal, say even the politician came and it becomes the same thing again. Or like what they say, the subcontractor of Palestine, which has totally no meaning. You understand? By giving you, or Indonesia by giving you card for voting, and that is democracy. So there must be now a global situation where we are all united in a real solid platform. Yes, in those days we have the Soviet bloc, the capitalist bloc, the imperialist bloc, the Soviet bloc, and now we have now we are all dispersed. But now with the new technology, with the internet, we are able to communicate together, like our comrades in Indonesia, our comrades in Rohingya. We shall come together, solidify our movement. There is no other two ways. And just look, for people now, our friends, on October, Trump might be coming or might not be coming to Malaysia, and let's see what happened. Okay, as the Arabs say, inshallah.
Yeah, well, I think we should organize a Asia-wide, or at least like online, the protest against that Trump's coming to Kuala Lumpur. Bring all the African, Asian, and Latin American activists online. We could host it.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead. Thank
so
you.
let's talk about it. And thank you so much to everybody. And it's been 2 hours, and so I like we would like to stay in touch with our brother and sister from Indonesia. Isham has my contact, and I think we should step up our efforts. Asia is a huge continent, the largest, the most populous continent, and we need a truly revolutionary movement like Bandung. Bandung was the movement of the states, and we need a movement of the people across Asian continent, and connected with Africa, Latin America, and parts of progressive Europe. And thank you so much to everybody.
Thank you.
You've just listened to the FORSEA
dialogue
on resistance.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kozani. Thank you.
Siap, nanti kita ngobrol-ngobrol.
Thank you, Syam.
Yeah.